Well, the rain has finally stopped today on Sunday, April 15th, 2018, here on the Island of Peace on Alum Creek. Talking about 13:10 here in the afternoon Eastern Time. Man, it was pouring like anything here. Started middle of last night and carried on pretty much till I got home from church here. Well, I got home from church around 9:30, but it kept carrying on till about an hour and a half ago. Oops, I lied. It's actually like 13:37 Eastern Time. I decided I'd start my sort of faux regulator style pendulum actual wind up for real clock. It's nice not to have some hideously sort of high pressure crushing your body that makes you feel like you're down in the depths of the ocean for a change. Human beings were designed to live at 3,000 or 4,000 feet altitude. Really, that's true. That's we are designed best. We function best at that altitude. So I read in church this morning at the 8 o'clock service, moderately unexpectedly, although that can always happen at the 8 o'clock service because, you know, people's schedules change and so forth. The man that likes to read on what would be the third Sunday of each month, well, his wife had some sort of cardiac event on what would have been Friday, and I mean the symptoms sounded like a classic sort of, you know, myocardial infarction coronary event. Now, admittedly, women's symptoms are somewhat different than men's. You know, in some of these, a lot of these instances, although you can't use that as a hard and fast generalization for any individual case. And so they got her down to St. Anne's and they got her into the cath lab, and her coronaries were absolutely clean, but she was having what's called, the Japanese name I think is Takudo Satsi or Takaduko Satsi syndrome. It's also called broken heart syndrome. And this isn't anything new. We were seeing things like this back in the 70s. They just weren't putting a separate name to it. We were calling it things like, a transient, you know, hypercatecholamine release thing or whatever. What it is, the patient, the individual involved gets this big discharge of catecholamines from the sympathetic nervous system, and it makes the ventricular muscle contract in an in a non-controlled, you know, it ejects the blood or doesn't eject the blood because it goes into this oddball, individualized, segmented dystonic thing. And so instead of a lot of the blood going out the aorta where it should go, a lot of it gets ejected into the apex of the ventricle and causes a little ballooning of the left ventricular apex. And it can lead to heart failure. Essentially, it's a relatively self-limited event, and then the individual's fine. But if it happens too often, then it can lead to ventricular muscle damage and cardiomyopathy and heart failure, chronic heart failure. So that was what happened with this woman. So she was home, and her husband didn't want to leave her to read in church, and she's kind of she's got some other problems too, you know, people that age do. I guess I should start saying people our age do. And yeah, so I was glad to read for him, rather, and they put her on some meds. She'll probably be just fine with this. Probably beta blockers. That's sort of like the usual starting thing they use. Anyway, so I was reading in church this morning, and you know, as you know, I've been kind of not really boycotting church, but just trying to sit out this interim period for a variety of reasons. But you know, all this stuff happens for a reason. I was so glad I ended up doing that today, because you know, you go up there and you do the readings, and then you do the prayers of the people, and then you help at communion. And along about going through the selection from the first letter of John. You know, the world did not know you because they did not know him. It's out of 1 John 3. You kind of get into that zone where I know it's really not me doing this. You know, it's like I'm just transmitting. And then when I did the prayers of the people, you get into that state, that connected state. And I was saying to myself toward the end, you know, I so needed this. I so needed to do this today. Yeah. So that was good. It was a good experience. It always is. I will say that Reverend Highland gave a really, really good sermon today. I know I've been kind of harsh on him, but see, rather than trying to give us a little lesson, he talked about prayerful encounters with God. And when he does that, he's very good. He's very, very good. And those of you who have listened to me for a number of years know that I'm into that too. Although I've really not talked about a lot of that as far as my own individual experiences have been. Yeah, so that was good. That was good. So the trash hasn't been collected. It's getting all nice and soggy down there for them. You know, just do your job, guys. Collected the mail from Saturday, which was 2 ads in The Economist. So my toilet reading for next week is in place. So we're good to go. I am having the most wonderful jambalaya belches. Here, let me show you. I got this canned jambalaya stuff yesterday, but chop up some sausage and bacon and put in there, and I threw in some extra peppers and can of tomatoes, and I've got this chili, this chili powder that my friend sent me in Seattle sent me. It's from New Mexico. So I had a very good meal last night, and I'm going to have a very good meal tonight. Meanwhile, Mr. Mr. Modem had to be reset last night just as I went to bed. I hope this isn't going to be a twice daily occurrence. I've got my tea already pre-made here for tomorrow. So I'll say bye-bye, YouTubers.